Could you be fired for refusing to take the coronavirus vaccine? Well, the Labour Department has put guidelines in place to deal with this issue, but some in the private sector say there is nothing that precludes them from dismissing workers. Well, let's get a view now from Mornè Malan from Trade Union Solidarity. Mornè, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday View on eNCA. I see there are some guidelines or directive that has come from the Employment and Labour Department, which is the topic of this discussion. So, my understanding is that you can be fired for refusing a COVID-19 jab without valid reasons. Am I correct?
Actually, Dan, the directives did two things. On the one hand, the directives did state, it actually confirmed the notion that there are certain very narrowly defined situations in which employers can compel their employees to take the vaccine or otherwise face disciplinary action or getting fired, but those are the exceptions. Those are a very small minority of the cases. The most important point of the directives are that they explicitly and unequivocally stated and affirmed the rights of the employees to refuse such vaccine. And the onus is actually not on the employee to prove why they shouldn't get the vaccine. The onus is very much on the employers to indicate why it is absolutely necessary from their perspective to force their employees.
So what grounds are those that will give employee the right to refuse?
Again, the right to refuse from the employee's perspective is entirely unrestricted, it's unlimited, and it's unqualified. So the employee can refuse for any reason whatsoever, whereas the employer then has to prove why it is either an operational requirement for them to have a particular set of employees vaccinated or why the risk profile of their employees necessitates it.
So an employer, in other words, can force employees, whether they want or not, to take the jab or else face losing their job?
Again, that is very much the exception to the rule. There are certain employers in very certain circumstances, very narrowly defined circumstances, where they can do that, but the general rule for 99% of the labour force in South Africa will be that your employer cannot force you to take the jab.
What happened to freedom of choice, freedom to choose?
Yes, exactly. That is our perspective at the moment as well. It doesn't have to be a debate of either being for or against the vaccine. It's simply a debate surrounding freedom of choice. No country in the world has made COVID vaccines mandatory, and the reason for that is quite clear. When one does release such mandates, it increases vaccine hesitancy and it decreases the overall effectiveness of the vaccine rollout in these sorts of countries.
But the right to operate, but the right of the employer to operate their business should also be borne in mind, shouldn't it, Mornè? Because if I'm expecting my employees to come to the office, especially under the current conditions of the pandemic, and I've got certain strict restrictions to be followed, I would encourage them to voluntarily take the jab, and if not, they might be jeopardizing my business operation, and I need to make a decision. Am I not entitled as an employer to protect the sustainability of the business as a going concern?
Well, certainly with regard to encouragement, any employer is entitled to encourage the employees to take the vaccine. Where it does come to the point of compulsion, the employer has to prove that it's an absolute operational requirement, and it has to indicate that alternative mechanisms were investigated and that these were found lacking. So, this is a very important issue because people don't realize this is actually forcing an individual to place a foreign substance in their body. And that's a very personal matter, and it should not be something which employers can force their employees to do lightly.
So what would Solidarity be doing now? Are you planning a legal challenge to get more clarity and in order to protect the rights, in this case, as a trade union, of your members and employees?
At the moment, we are just confirming and affirming the position of employees within the labour force, and we are stating that if there are employees who are being compelled by their employers, then they should seek legal advice, because the legal position at the moment is quite clear that they cannot be compelled and they cannot be obliged to take the vaccine, and also that their refusal to take the vaccine cannot result in any adverse consequences for them in the workplace.
Thank you very much. Mornè Malan from Trade Union Solidarity. We have to keep on watching this development, this story here.